Hi guys. Okay, so trigger warning. So I was gonna share this with you guys yesterday, and I literally passed the area. Yesterday's when I had the revelation about something, right? The revelation. And I was gonna share it with you guys yesterday, but I was like, no, I don't want to share this. You know? So today I passed the area again, okay? And I'm like, God, what are you doing? And I had the thought about the revelation that I had yesterday, and I'm like, God, what are you doing? I don't want to share this. I'm like, nah, I'm not gonna share anything. And I was making all these excuses to not share this word, because I do have to explain a little bit of my testimony in order for me to share this word, right? And so I was making excuses like, I ain't gonna share this. And I got to the food place because we went to go get some food. And I'm like, God, I can't share this word because I have to use the bathroom. And, you know, and if I have to use the bathroom, I'm not going to share the word because I'm going to be uncomfortable. I can't share the word the way I want to share the word. So I'm here making up all these excuses to not share the word with y'all about this. I go inside this restaurant, and this is a type of restaurant where you can't sit down. It's just grab your food and go. They don't have chairs, nothing in there to sit down. So I wasn't thinking they would ever have a bathroom in there for the public. They had a little bathroom. I didn't even ask. The bathroom was right there in front of me, open door and everything. I'm like, oh man. God's like, go use the bathroom. I use the bathroom, and I'm like, okay, fine, I'm gonna share the word. But I made up a lot of excuses to not share the word. So there's this area that I drove past yesterday, and I drove past this a couple times, but I didn't really notice it, and I didn't really pay attention to the surroundings. There's a church in this area, and it brought back a lot of memories. Not only was a church in this area, but there's across the street from the church, there's this place that my kingdom husband used to go to. And he used to go there seasonally, not all the time, but maybe like a couple months out the year, he would go there at a certain time of the year, because they would have this event thingy there. And I had no idea that it was across the church. And I'm going to explain something to you. So in 2016 was when I went through the worst warfare of my life. The warfare that I went through almost killed me. It was a mixture between my kingdom husband's ex-wife doing spell work on me, aka black magic, some of my family doing witchcraft on me, and another woman doing witchcraft on me. 3 women doing witchcraft on me at the same time. I didn't have God in my life like the way I have God now, but he was there. He was present. But I wasn't as close to him like I am now. Like, I wasn't as sensitive in the spirit like I am now. When I mean the witchcraft was so bad, the warfare was so bad, people in public thought I was on drugs. That's how bad the warfare was. I was starting when I was talking. I couldn't talk straight. The spirit that they sent me, on top of that, the witchcraft that was done to me took control of my mind. I couldn't talk straight. I couldn't think straight. I couldn't even eat. I couldn't keep nothing down. Not only was that happening to my body, but I was able to even see the spirit. I was able to see the freaking spirit. And the spirit was chasing me. So when I was at this family member's house, I would see the spirit in the house, this dark shadow entity. Not the death spirit. I saw the death spirit. When I was in the same building as the ex-wife, I saw the death spirit. That's when she sent me the death spirit, the suicide spirit. She was trying to get me to kill myself in the building. When I left the building and went to my family member's house, I saw another spirit. It was a shadow spirit. Similar to Shadow Man, like Princess and the Frog. You know how he was in a spirit form? Without the big hat, though. but it looked like that. The spirit followed me everywhere I went, and I would see it, and nobody saw it but me. And it chased me around the city. So I remember when I was at this family member's house, every time I was in her house, the spirit would attack me. My internal inside, my organs, everything felt like it was under attack. I felt my throat closing in on me. I couldn't eat nothing. Every time I was in the house, the weight in the house was so heavy, it was like it was sucking me in, like the python spirit. Child, the only way for me to feel a little bit of lightness from the witchcraft was for me to leave the house. But when I would leave the house, I would see the spirit following me. So I remember I didn't have any money in my bank account, but I had the type of bank account where you can, if you deposit money, it gives it to you right away. So I had to deposit an empty envelope because I ain't got no money. And I'm like, man, I gotta leave this house. I ain't got no money. I gotta get out of here. The spirit's chasing me. It's trying to kill me. Every time I sit down in the house and sit still, the spirit tries to enter my body and it's painful. The only way the spirit can't enter my body is if I get up and I move around, and the spirit was moving around with me and chasing me. I'm like, I ain't got no money to leave the house. I don't got no money for taxi. I don't got money for bus fare, nothing. So I'm like, man, I'm gonna have to deposit this empty envelope in the bank machine and withdraw the money. I deposited an empty envelope, and I said to the bank that I deposited 800, and then I took out 800. Of course I was in a negative, and of course I had to pay it back, which I paid off. Obviously I paid off that debt, you know, but at the time that's what I had to do to survive. The witchcraft in the house was heavy. Y'all don't even know, like, y'all don't even know. So when I got the money, I called a taxi driver, and the taxi driver picked me up, and I didn't know where I was gonna go. I just told the taxi driver, drive me to Scarborough, drive me this, drive me to downtown, drive me to Etobicoke. Like, the taxi driver was driving me around the whole GTA, the whole city, and the taxi fare was coming up to 200, 300. So I'm like, bring me to a church, because I saw the church on the highway. I'm like, bring me to this church. And I started pointing to the church. He brought me to the church. But this was not the first day. This is probably like days of me driving around a taxi. So this is probably like the third, fourth day. Okay, so like a couple of days before, the taxi driver would drive me to different places, but I would have to end up going back to the family member's house because I had nowhere to go. But I would still have leftover money. So then I would go through those nights of torture while the spirit tortured me. And then the third, fourth day, I don't remember exactly which day, but the third, fourth day, I'm like, I remembered the church on the highway, and I called a taxi, and then we drove, and I'm like, take me to the church. He brought me to the church. Mind you, this was around the same time. Remember I said my kingdom husband would go to these events 2 months out the year, and the church was right across the street from the places where he would go, and I didn't know that. I didn't know that till now. I didn't even notice it till now, till yesterday. But every time I was in the area, I would feel his presence around. I didn't know why. Like, every time I came to the church, like when I went to not to the church, but when I drove by that area, right around the time I was being attacked, I would always just think about him, like, for some reason. I remember when the taxi driver drove me to the church, he was on my mind heavily, and I didn't know why. Not realizing that across the street, down the street there was the event place. But I didn't know that because I wasn't in my right mind. Remember, I'm not in my right mind. People thought I was on drugs. You know, my hair is a mess. My face has big boils from the witchcraft. My pupils are big. It's literally covering my the brown part of my eye was literally black from my pupil being so big. So my pupil was dilated so much, everyone thought I was on drugs. Let's just say that. This is what they would call psychosis, but it's not psychosis. It's disguised as psychosis because they don't want y'all to know that you're having access to the spiritual realm, right? So they use psychosis as a disguise. But that's a whole nother video which I already talked about, and I'm gonna post it in the link, okay? Anyways, I went to the church, and when I went into the church, it was daytime, and I remember they had like a summer camp at the church. So before the driver even brought me to the church, like for like, remember, I was driving around for like 4 days already, right? But I couldn't find nowhere to go, so I ended up going back to the family member's house. And when I went back to the family member's house, the spirit was torturing me at night. Literally, the spirit would torture me at night. So the next day, I remembered I saw a church when we were driving past the highway. So I told the taxi driver, hey, bring me to the church on the where the highway is, right? So as we got closer, I showed it to him. I'm like, there's a church, bring me to the church. He brought me to the church. When I got to the church, I kept the taxi driver's number. I'm like, I'll call you when I'm finished. He said, okay. No, I think I asked him to wait for me, but he said he couldn't. So he said he'll pick me up in like an hour or something like that, or 2 hours, something like that. So when I got in the church, I remember this guy greeted me, and there was a bunch of kids. Looked like there was a day camp going on. The day camp was going on. And when I got to the church, I remember I kept feeling like my kingdom husband's presence, like he was close by, but I didn't know why. But when the guy greeted me, I was like, hi, do you have a place where I can pray? I really need help. Da, 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 da. So he said, yeah, we have an altar. And he took me to the altar. So I kneeled down and started praying. As I started praying, you know, I felt the witchcraft getting worse, right? It started getting worse and worse and worse. And the church didn't really feel like it had the Holy Spirit. But I did remember at some points when the witchcraft was getting really bad, I would feel this warmness come over my body, which was the Holy Spirit at the time, but I didn't know. But it wasn't because of the church, because I was already feeling this warmness come and go here and there while I was being attacked for the last like 4 or 5 days, right? 4 or 5 days. So when I felt the warmness come, it went and it came, and it went and it came, but it would always come when attacks would get really bad. So when I was in a church, the warmness came again, and then it went away. And then when it went away, the guy came in and was like, oh, do you need help with anything? Are you okay? And I remember venting to him about, I didn't tell him what was going on with me, because at the time I didn't really know it was witchcraft. I suspected it, but I didn't fully know what was going on. I just thought I was dying. That's it. And I remember telling him, I'm just so tired of people messing with me. You know, I'm a nice person. I didn't do anything to nobody, and people betrayed me and all of that. And mind you, the witchcraft was so strong that was done to me. Remember, it was coming from 3 different places, to the point where I couldn't even cry. Like I would try to cry, and I couldn't cry at all. But my soul was screaming to cry, and my body was screaming to cry, but I couldn't cry. I couldn't laugh. It was like I was numb, and it looked like I was on drugs. My pupils were so big, like dilated, so big. He started talking to me, and he gave me a little bit of a motivational speech, and just told me like, you know, people leave our lives for a reason and stuff like that. And then he said, do you need more time? I said, yes, I need more time. So he left me alone, let me pray. So as I got on my knees to pray again, right, I remember falling over to the side, and I started shaking, like trembling. And he came in, and he was like, oh my gosh, you need an ambulance, you need an ambulance. And I was like, no. And then the woman came in like, oh my gosh, should I call an ambulance? I was like, no. And they didn't know what was going on with me. And then I remember he did try to pray over me, but it didn't work. It was like when he prayed over me, it didn't really help in the time. It didn't help at all. So I remember I was like, stay calm, Steph. There's kids in the other room. You know, they have a day camp going on here. You don't want to, you know what I mean? So I was actually being as peaceful as possible. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't screaming or nothing. Remember, the altar wasn't even close to the kids. Like, they're in a whole nother section of the church, because they have a day camp, and the altar's on a whole nother section of the church. I remember I got up, and I'm like, okay, I feel a bit better. I remember walking outside to see if the taxi driver was here. And then when I walked outside and came back to the church, the guy locked the door and locked me out. And at the time I was feeling a little bit better, but he assumed I was on drugs. He assumed that I was on drugs, and he assumed I was dangerous and all that. And I feel like he locked me out because the kids, you know, the kids were there in the other room, and they had a day camp going on. But I couldn't help but feel so rejected in that moment, because I was like, man, I need help. I'm at a church, and you're locking me out. I remember I remember holding the glass like this, and I was knocking on the glass like this, like, help me, please, I need help, please, I need prayer, I need something. And they were just looking at me, like the man and the woman were just looking at me, like, and they wouldn't open the door. And I'm like, please, please. They wouldn't open the door. They just kept ignoring me, and they would look here and there. And then I remember the taxi driver pulled up like 30 minutes later. I felt so rejected and hurt in that moment, you know? And little did I know that not too far away, my Kingdom Husband's event thingy was like down the street, you know? So I felt so rejected. I felt so hurt. And that wasn't the only church I went to. These attacks lasted for about 10 days straight, where I felt numb. I couldn't cry, I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep. I was losing weight, my hair was falling out, boils on my face. I was literally under, I think, 115 pounds. And I was being attacked by these 3 women at the same time. Mind you, around that time, it was a new moon. It was a new moon. Attacks lasted 10 days. And throughout the 10 days, I was driving around in a taxi with nowhere to go, just wasting money. And I remember going to other churches, and they did the same thing. Like, when I went to other churches, they would, like, look at me, walk by me, not pray for me. They just looked at me, and they mean mugged me, gave me this look like, oh, she's the devil. Well, she has the devil in her. Like, they looked at me like I was this demon. And all of them assumed that I was on drugs. They treated me like I was, like, you know, just a demon. And when people did try to pray over me, and it wasn't a lot of people, it was probably like 2 or 3 people that tried to pray over me, I didn't feel the Holy Spirit. I didn't feel nothing. Right? But I say this to say that when I drove by there yesterday, it's just like God spoke to me and was like, remember this area. And being where I am today with my relationship with God and the position I'm in, and knowing about warfare and all of that, and hearing the voice of God and knowing how he feels and everything, I started to realize and reflect back and realize really how many churches really don't really have the Holy Spirit, and how many people really don't have the Holy Spirit. You know? And it just really shocked me, because I see things differently today. And it also, it just, you know, it's the revelation of how many churches really don't understand what warfare is, or don't understand what witchcraft is, and they don't even know the signs and what to look for when someone is being attacked. A lot of churches and people are clueless about this. The people that understand this are the very people who are equipped, the very people who have the Holy Spirit, who are able to hear, see, feel him, who know that this stuff is real, who are equipped. But because a lot of people don't have the Holy Spirit, or a lot of people, it's almost like they just see you as a demon, or they see you as a druggie, or see you as not a human being, and they treat you that way, you know? And I just want to say something to you guys. The main point of the message was to share that with you, and share how me going through that helped with my revelation of understanding that some churches don't have the Holy Spirit, and people don't have the Holy Spirit. So all of that I went through, it made me feel very discouraged about church. Also, there was other incidents that happened when I went to other churches for help that were very inappropriate and not cool, which ultimately led me to give up on church altogether. Not God, but church altogether. And it made me turn away from church completely, going through all that, because it made me realize how much people didn't really have the Holy Spirit, how much people really didn't care about people, but they use church as this cover up, as this disguise, and it led me away from church, going through all of that. And you know, I ended up going onto the wrong path after that. You know, not really the wrong path, because God used that path to help me and a lot of people come back to him, but I would say it led me into a different path, basically. And I just want to share this with you guys. Don't let church hurt or any type of trauma you've experienced from church make you feel like you don't have to attend church at all. I understand you don't need church to build a relationship with God. Totally get it, and it's the truth. You build your relationship with God on your own. But don't let what you go through cause you to not even want to go to church, because church is still important. Fellowship is still important. And I know it's discouraging when there's not a lot of people who have the Holy Spirit, and not a lot of people who are equipped in the areas of warfare and witchcraft and all that, knowledge-wise. I know it can be discouraging, and it feels helpless sometimes, and it feels pointless sometimes. But pray and ask God to lead you to the right church, to the right people. Because after that, I didn't step foot in a church for maybe... I didn't step foot in a church until 3 years later. And the church that I stepped foot in was the first church I've actually walked into and felt the Holy Spirit like that, and cried the first time I walked in there. I felt so accepted and warm, and God confirmed that church, and that's the same church I still go to on Sundays. You get what I'm saying? So don't let people make you feel like you don't have to go to church. You know, in general, you don't have to go to church to know God, but church is still important. You know, just pray and ask God to lead you to the right church. But I wanted to share that with you guys, to show you guys like how crazy the warfare really is and all of that. But anyways, I love you guys. Bye.